Rain fell sideways across the small colony station that night. The water hit the windows like tiny stones, and inside the children's wing, Daniel Reyes was singing softly to a sleepy three-armed toddler. The little one had cried for an hour. Daniel had not stopped rocking him for a single second of that hour. He never did. That was the kind of man he was. He did not notice the alarm at first. The toddler was finally drifting off, and Daniel was holding his breath, careful not to move. Then the floor shook. A long, deep shake that made the bottles on the shelf rattle. Something very large had just landed outside. Daniel placed the toddler down with slow hands and walked to the window. Through the rain he could see the docking bay glowing red with warning lights. Staff were running in the other direction. A few were screaming, and in the middle of the bay stood a ship he had never seen before. Long, black, shaped like a folded wing. Gold lines ran along its sides like veins of fire. The door of the ship opened. Out stepped a dragon. Not a small one, not a storybook one. A real dragon, 20 feet tall at the shoulder, scales the color of dark wine, eyes like burning coins. Steam curled from its nostrils in the cold rain. It walked across the bay slowly, and the floor cracked under each step. Daniel did not run. He never knew why. Maybe it was because the toddler behind him was finally asleep, and running would wake him. Maybe it was because Daniel had been afraid of many things in his life, but he had also held many crying children, and somewhere along the way he had stopped being afraid of large things. He walked out to meet the dragon. The huge creature lowered its head until its eyes were level with his. "Daniel Reyes," it said. Its voice was deep and very tired. "I am Envoy Tarn of the Draconid Empire. I have traveled far. May I sit?" Daniel blinked. "Of course," he said. Then, because he did not know what else to do, he added, "Would you like some tea?" The dragon stared at him for a long moment, then it laughed, a short, surprised laugh. "Yes," it said, "I would." That was how it began. They sat together in the staff kitchen, the dragon curled around 3 tables, Daniel pouring tea into the largest pot he could find. The envoy explained slowly. The Dragon Empress had 2 children, twin princes, hatched 10 months ago. They had never smiled, not once. They did not cry, they did not laugh, they did not reach for their mother. The Empire's best healers had failed. The Empire's best teachers had failed. The Empress was losing hope. A galactic council had given her a strange piece of advice. There was one species in the known galaxy that was known to raise the young of other species and succeed. Humans. Soft, small, short-lived humans. The Empress had read every record. One name had appeared again and again, marked with stars. Daniel Reyes. "She is asking," the envoy said, "if you will come." Daniel held his cup with both hands. His tea had gone cold. "They are Bobby's," he said quietly. "Of course I'll come." He left 2 days later. His bag was small. A few clothes. A small wooden star he had carved during long shifts. A photo of his sister who had died when she was 9 and he was 12. He never went anywhere without that photo. The journey took 6 weeks. Daniel spent most of it learning what he could. Dragons lived for thousands of years. They were proud. They believed strength was the highest virtue. Their young were raised by warrior tutors who never touched them, never praised them, never held them. The Empress was the most feared ruler in 3 star systems. She had broken whole fleets. She had also, the envoy admitted in a low voice, cried in private every night for 10 months. The ship reached the homeworld of Vethara on a clear evening. Daniel pressed his face to the window like a child. The planet was beautiful, mountains higher than clouds, cities of black stone and gold. And rising above the highest mountain, a single tower so tall it touched the upper sky, the Imperial Hatchery Spire. He was met at the landing by a dragon in silver armor. This one did not bow. He looked Daniel up and down the way a person looks at a stain on a clean floor. "I am High Warden Krell," he said. "I do not approve of your presence. The Empress has chosen poorly. I serve her anyway. Follow me." Daniel followed. The halls of the spire were huge. Each step Daniel took, the warden took one. Each step the warden took covered 4 of Daniel's. Daniel had to half jog. He did not complain. At last they reached a great round room with a floor of warm stone. In the center sat 2 small dragons. Each was the size of a large dog. Dark scales, pale bellies, tiny horns just beginning to curl. They sat side by side, perfectly still. Their amber eyes were open. They did not turn their heads when Daniel entered. They did not blink. Daniel's chest hurt. He walked forward slowly. He knelt down a few feet away from them. He took the small wooden star out of his pocket and placed it gently on the warm stone between them. "Hello, little ones," he said softly. "I'm Daniel. I'm here now. You don't have to do anything. I'm just going to sit here a while." The twins did not move. They did not look at him. They did not look at the star. Behind him, somewhere in the shadows above, Daniel felt a presence watching. He did not turn around. He did not need to. Outside the high windows, the sun set slowly over Vethara, painting the sky a soft gold. And in a small room far above, the most feared ruler in the empire watched a human kneel in front of her silent children, and she dared, for the first time in months, to feel something close to hope. Morning on Vethara did not begin with a sunrise. It began with a bell. A great iron bell at the top of the spire, struck once by a dragon guard, and the sound rolled down the mountain like thunder rolling down a long road. Every dragon in the city heard it. Every dragon in the city stood at attention. Daniel Reyes sat up in his small bed and rubbed his eyes. The bell was loud even 10 floors below the top. He pulled on his clothes, drank a glass of water, and walked to the nursery. He had been on Vethara for 3 days. He had a plan. He had many plans. None of them, he was about to learn, were going to work. The twins were already awake when he arrived. Ser and An sat exactly where they had sat the night before. Same spot. Same posture. The small wooden star Daniel had left was still on the floor between them, untouched. Daniel smiled anyway. "Good morning, you two," he said, sitting cross-legged a little distance away. "Did you sleep well?" "I slept all right. The bed here is bigger than my whole old room." No answer, no glance, nothing. He tried singing. He knew lullabies in 4 languages. He sang them all. The twins stared straight ahead. He tried puppets. He had brought small cloth puppets in his bag, a bunny, a bear, a funny round one with one eye. He made them dance. He made them argue. He made the bear sit on the bunny by mistake. Nothing. 2 small dragons staring at the wall. He tried food. The kitchen had prepared a special warm milk drink for the hatchlings, sweet and safe for their species. Daniel offered it gently. The twins drank it when he placed the cups near their mouths. Then they went still again. They were not refusing him. They simply were not there. By midday Daniel was sweating, even though the hall was cool. In the corner 2 dragon guards watched. He could feel their smiles even though dragons did not smile the way humans did. Their tails moved in slow, lazy circles. They were enjoying this. The human was failing. High Warden Krell entered at midday and said only one word. "Pathetic." He left again. Daniel did not eat lunch. He sat with the twins instead. He told them about his old colony. He told them about the 3-armed toddler who liked to chew on cold spoons. He told them about his sister. He had not told anyone about his sister in years, but he told them. He did not know why. At one point while he was talking, the bell rang again, a heavy single strike, and Daniel saw it. He almost missed it, but he saw it. Ser flinched. Not much. A tiny tightening of the small shoulders, a blink that was just a fraction too fast. Then the hatchling was still again, as if nothing had happened. Daniel's heart began to beat differently. He watched more carefully after that, and he saw more. Small things. An leaned half an inch toward the warm sunlight when it moved across the floor. Ser's tail, while resting, touched An's tail, and both twins seemed to settle a tiny bit deeper into their stillness when that small touch happened. When a guard laughed too loudly across the hall, both twins went a shade more stiff. They were not empty, they were hiding. That night Daniel went to Lady Myra Tunn. She was a junior scholar of the Spire, young by dragon standards, only 200 years old. With pale green scales and quick, clever eyes, she had been kind to him when no one else had been. He asked her if she could find any records about how the twins had been raised before he arrived. Myra looked left and right. The hall was empty. "I cannot give you what you are asking for," she said. Then she pressed a small data crystal into his hand and walked away without another word. Daniel read it all night. He read about a panel of warrior tutors who believed royal dragons must be perfect from the shell. He read about how, on the second day after hatching, Sayre had let out a small chirp of fear when a tutor lifted him too quickly. He read how the tutor had set the chirping hatchling alone in a dark room for 6 hours as a lesson. He read how On, the very next day, had reached his small head toward a different tutor for warmth, and how that tutor had calmly turned away and refused to look at him. He read how both twins had cried for many days in the early weeks. He read how the crying had been met with cold silence and longer hours alone. He read until he could not read any more. The data crystal said the twins had stopped crying around their 3rd month. The tutors had marked it as a success. Royal dignity achieved. Daniel closed the file and sat on his small bed. His hands were shaking. His eyes were wet. He thought about 2 tiny dragons reaching out and learning, day by day, that reaching out was useless. He thought about how long a baby has to cry alone before the baby decides it is not worth crying anymore. He did not sleep. In the morning he did not bring puppets. He did not bring songs. He did not bring food or toys or plans. He walked into the great round room with empty hands. He sat down on the floor right between Sayre and On, not in front of them, between them, close enough to feel the small warmth coming from their bodies. He did not speak. He did not try to make them look at him. He simply sat, and he hummed, a quiet song, the same song his mother used to hum when he was small and sick and afraid. He sat there for 6 hours. He did not move. The guard stopped smiling after the 3rd hour. By the end of the day, Sayre had shifted, very slowly, very quietly, 6 inches closer to Daniel's side. It was not a smile, it was not a laugh, it was not even a glance, but it was a movement, a choice. The first choice either of them had made in many months. Daniel went back to his room that night and cried into his pillow for an hour. Then he washed his face, drank some water, and slept the deepest sleep he had slept in years. A storm rolled across Vethara on the 7th day. The kind of storm that only comes to mountain worlds, where the wind has a voice and the rain has weight. The great spire stood tall against it, but inside the windows shook in their black stone frames, and the warm stones of the nursery floor glowed a little brighter to make up for the gray light outside. Daniel Reyes walked into the nursery that morning carrying a blanket, just a blanket, soft, gray, well-worn. It was his own blanket from his own bed. He had brought it from his colony station, and he had slept under it every night for 6 years. It smelled like him. He spread it gently over both hatchlings. Sayre stiffened the moment the cloth touched his back. On went very still. They had never been covered before. No one had ever tucked them in. Daniel sat down beside them. "It's cold today," he said softly. "When it is cold, people who love each other share warm things. This is mine. Now it is also yours." He did not wait for an answer. He took out a small book, an old human storybook with pictures of farm animals. He began to read. He did the voices. The cow had a slow, lazy voice. The duck had a high, silly voice. The horse spoke like an old wise grandfather. Daniel read for an hour. The storm whispered against the windows. When he closed the book, Sayre had not pushed the blanket off. On had not either. The blanket was still on their small backs. Daniel did not point it out. He just said, "I'll read more tomorrow," and stood to leave. He stopped at the door and turned around. Both hatchlings were watching him, just for a moment. Two pairs of amber eyes. They looked away the second he met their gaze, but they had been watching. He smiled all the way back to his room. The next morning Daniel brought warm pastries. The kitchen had cleared the ingredients with the imperial physicians. Small soft buns, the size of his fist, sweet and a little buttery. He ate one slowly in front of the twins. He chewed loud and happy. He hummed while he chewed. He acted as if the pastry was the best thing in the whole galaxy. Then he set two pastries on a clean cloth and put it within reach of the hatchlings. He went back to his side of the floor. He did not watch them. He pretended to read. It took 20 minutes, but An moved first. The smaller twin stretched his neck very carefully and sniffed at the pastry. Then slowly he picked it up in his teeth. He did not eat it yet. He carried it back to where Ser sat. He placed it in front of his brother. Then he went back and picked up the other one for himself. Daniel had to look at the ceiling for a long moment. That afternoon, something happened that taught Daniel everything he needed to know. An was walking past a small side table when his tail, still clumsy and growing, knocked a small crystal sculpture off the edge. The sculpture hit the stone floor and shattered into 100 bright pieces. The sound was sharp and loud. An froze. It was the kind of freeze Daniel had seen many times in many children. The freeze of a child who has been hit before. The freeze of a child who is waiting for the bad thing to come. Ser across the room also froze. He was watching his brother. He was waiting too. They had both been taught what came next. The two dragon guards in the corner stiffened. One of them began to move forward, his face hard, ready to deliver some old correction. Daniel was faster. He stood up calmly. He walked over without rushing. He knelt down. He did not look at the broken crystal. He looked at An. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, look at me, little one." An's amber eyes shook in their sockets. He did not want to look, but after a long moment he did. "It's just a thing," Daniel said. "Things break, that is what things do. I have broken many things in my life. My mother broke things, my sister broke things, everyone breaks things. You are not in trouble, you are not bad, you are okay." He picked up the largest pieces with his bare hands. He cut his finger a little. He did not show it. He gathered the rest with a cloth. "See," he said, "gone, all cleaned up. You are more important than a sculpture. You are more important than 100 sculptures. Do you understand?" An did not answer. He could not yet, but he stared at Daniel's face with such intense focus that the air in the room felt heavy. The guard who had stepped forward stepped back. He did not know what he had just seen, but he knew it was not what he had expected. That night, when Daniel came to tuck the twins into the warm stone bed where they slept, something new happened. He spread the blanket over them. He said, "Good night, you two, sleep well. I will be right down the hall." He reached out, the way he had reached out 100 times now, to brush a hand near them but never quite touch. He had not yet touched them. He had been waiting for them to decide. This time An moved. The small hatchling lifted his head, leaned forward and pressed his small horned brow against Daniel's open palm. Just for a second. 2 heartbeats. Then he pulled back as if surprised by his own action. Daniel did not move, did not gasp, did not make a single sound that might frighten the moment. He simply said very gently, "Thank you, little one. Good night." He walked out of the nursery with calm, steady steps. He turned the corner. He leaned against the wall, and he covered his face with both hands. High above the spire in a private chamber, Empress Vala watched the scene replay in her viewing crystal. She watched it 3 times. On the 3rd time, the most feared ruler in 3 star systems sank slowly to her knees on the cold floor of her own throne room, and the Dragon Empress wept, silently and completely, for her child who had finally chosen to touch someone. High Warden Krell, who was guarding the door, heard her. He looked at the floor and said nothing. But that night, for the first time, he wondered if he had been wrong. By the 3rd week, The twins had begun to follow. It started with small distances. Daniel would walk across the nursery to fetch a cup of water, and when he turned around, Sarah would be 3 steps behind him. Sarah would freeze as if caught and pretend to be studying the floor with great interest. Daniel pretended not to notice. He simply kept moving. Soon On was following too. Then both of them side by side. Tiny claws clicking softly on the stone, trailing the human through every part of the day. They watched him eat. They watched him brush his teeth. They watched him laugh during a long video call with his old colony friends, and when he laughed, both small heads tilted sharply to the side at exactly the same angle. They had never heard a sound like a human laugh. It was high and bright and broken into pieces. It did not sound like a roar. It did not sound like anything they knew. Daniel saw the head tilts, and a small idea began to grow in him. The next morning he asked the kitchen for cushions, many cushions. He asked the cleaning staff for long ribbons. He asked Lady Myra if there was anything in the spire shaped like a feather on a stick. She brought him a ceremonial dust brush, almost as long as he was tall, with bright golden feathers at the end. She did not ask why. She winked once and walked away. Daniel spent 2 hours building. He arranged the cushions across the great hall in a wobbling line. He tied ribbons between the high lamps. He set the feather stick at one end. The 2 dragon guards in the corner watched in deep horror. The great imperial hatchery spire, throne of dragon princes, was being turned into something that looked like a child's birthday party. When the twins arrived for their morning time, they stopped in the doorway. They looked at the strange, soft path of cushions. They looked at the dancing ribbons. They looked at the human standing in the middle of it all. Daniel grinned. "Watch this," he said. He took a running start, jumped at the first cushion, slipped on purpose, and fell flat on his back with a loud oof. The ribbons trembled above him. He lay there making a soft, theatrical groan, one leg sticking up in the air. The guards stared. One of them looked physically pained. Daniel rolled over, climbed onto the next cushion, made a silly, serious face, and tiptoed across like a thief in an old movie. Then he tripped over his own foot and tumbled into the 3rd cushion with a yelp. The twins did not move, but their eyes were wide, very wide. Daniel picked up the feather stick. He whirled it around his head. He danced with it like it was a partner. He made the feathers chase his own feet. He pretended to be afraid of the feathers. He ran from them in slow motion. He hid behind a cushion. The feathers found him. He gasped. He fell over again. That was when it happened. Sarah opened his mouth. A small sound came out. A short, sharp chirping sound, half a squeak, half a hiccup, a laugh. Daniel froze. The feather stick froze in his hand. He did not turn his head. He did not look at Sarah directly. He knew if he made a big deal of it, the moment might break. He kept playing. He twirled the feather stick. He made it dance toward Sarah, very slowly, like a shy creature coming closer. On was staring at his brother. On had heard the sound too. On did not understand what had happened to Sarah. The feather brushed past Sarah's nose. Sarah chirped again, louder this time, a real giggle, tiny fangs showing, amber eyes lit up. On looked from Sarah to Daniel to the feather. On opened his small mouth. He tried. A choked little wheeze came out. He closed his mouth, surprised at himself. He tried again. This time it came easier. A small, bright laugh. 2 baby dragons, laughing, in the great imperial hatchery spire where laughter had not been heard in living memory. Daniel sat down hard on the cushion. He set the feather stick down. He did not trust his legs. His hands were shaking. He laughed too, soft and wet, eyes full of tears he did not bother to hide. "Oh," he said, "oh, look at you, look at you." And then both twins, in the same moment, did the thing the entire empire had been waiting for. They smiled. Not a dragon smile of bared teeth and warning. A baby smile, a real one, curled lips soft and small, fangs only just showing, eyes shining, cheeks high. Sayre's wings, which he had never opened, gave a tiny half-flutter, the way a happy child's hands flap when they cannot hold the feeling inside. Daniel covered his mouth with his hand. High above the hall in a private chamber, Empress Vala saw it through her viewing crystal. She had been watching every day, every hour. She saw both smiles bloom on her sons' faces at the same moment. The crystal in her claws cracked, not from anger, from the way she had been gripping it. She pressed her great forehead against the cool stone floor and let out a long, shuddering breath that was almost a sob. Down in the hall, High Warden Krell had walked in only seconds before. He had been on his way to deliver a sharp word about the chaos in the nursery. He stood in the doorway and saw the cushions and the ribbons and the dancing feather and the laughing princes. He saw the humans sitting cross-legged on the floor, weeping and laughing at the same time. He saw Sayre's small wings flutter. Krell, the High Warden of the Imperial Hatchery, the dragon who had not bowed to anything but the Empress in 400 years, slowly sank down onto one armored knee. It was not surrender, it was not submission. It was awe. The twins kept laughing for almost a full minute. They tried different sounds, short squeaks, long bright notes. They were learning what their own happiness sounded like in real time for the very first time. Daniel sat with them through every second of it. When at last they grew tired and pressed themselves against his sides, one twin under each of his arms, Daniel held them gently and said nothing at all. He did not need to. Somewhere outside, the great iron bell of Vethara rang for evening. The hatchlings did not flinch. News travels fast in an empire of dragons. Within a week, every great house in the capital had heard. The royal hatchlings were smiling. The royal hatchlings were laughing. The royal hatchlings followed a small, soft-skinned creature down the halls of the spire like ducklings behind a mother. Some nobles came to see for themselves. Most of them stood in the back of the great hall with stiff faces and pretended not to be moved. A few left the spire with quiet tears they did not show until they were home. Other nobles were not moved at all. They were furious. Lord Vaskar was the loudest of these. He was an old dragon, scarred and proud, the head of a powerful traditionalist house. He believed dragons were dragons and humans were food. He believed royal blood must be hard from birth. He believed the Empress had been bewitched by a small, clever creature, and he believed something had to be done. He gathered a faction. He wrote a petition. He stood in the imperial court and demanded the human be sent home. The Empress did not even let him finish. "You will speak no more of this," she said. Her voice was quiet. It was the kind of quiet that made every other voice in the room close like a door. "My sons smile, my sons live. The human stays. This audience is over." Lord Vaskar bowed. He left the court, and in the privacy of his own great house he made a different kind of decision. Daniel knew nothing of this. He was busy. The twins now climbed on him. They had learned that he was warm and soft and would not break. Sayre liked to drape himself across Daniel's shoulders, small wings tucked in, watching the world from up high. An preferred to coil around Daniel's legs and ride along the floor as Daniel tried to walk, making small grumbling noises whenever Daniel slowed down. They had started talking, not in words yet. Sounds, chirps and hums and small huffing noises that meant 1,000 different things. Daniel was learning them faster than any dragon scholar had ever expected. Lady Myra documented everything. Her data crystals were full. She had begun a new branch of imperial study, which she called, very carefully and very privately, the science of small kindness. High Warden Krell had changed too. He still did not smile because his face was not built for it, but he no longer made cold remarks. Twice now he had stopped Daniel in a hallway and asked, almost gruffly, if the human needed anything. The third time he asked, Daniel had said, "A second pillow would be nice, actually," and Krell had brought him 3. The night it happened, Vethara was peaceful. The storm of weeks ago was long gone. The sky over the spire was clear, and 1,000 small moons made silver patterns on the stone walls. Daniel was asleep. He woke because the air was wrong. The air in his small room was heavier than it should be. Hot, too hot. He opened his eyes slowly. A dragon stood at the foot of his bed. Not a guard, not Krell. This dragon was huge and dark, and his eyes were a sick yellow, and there was a long thin blade strapped to his side. Lord Vaskar's man, an assassin sent in secret. He had bypassed 3 layers of guard with the help of certain bribed servants. He had come for the human. He had also come for the twins. Lord Vaskar had decided the twins were now ruined. Better to start fresh with a new clutch. Daniel sat up. He did not scream. He did not reach for a weapon. He had no weapon. He had never held one. "Who are you?" he said quietly. "I am the end of you," the assassin said. "Move and the princes go next. Stay still and only you die." Daniel looked at the door that led to the nursery hall. He thought about Sayre's small head pressed against his palm. He thought about Ann's first laugh. He stood up from the bed. "You are not going near them," he said. His voice did not shake. He did not know why. "Whatever you think this is, whatever you think you are saving, you'll have to go through me first. They are children. I am their guardian. You are not getting past me." The assassin laughed. It was a low, ugly laugh. He raised the blade. A sound came from the doorway. A small, sharp, furious sound. Sayre stood there. The little prince had woken at the noise. He had walked down the hall in the dark. He had heard Daniel's voice through the open door. He had seen the huge dragon. He had seen the blade. And something inside him, something very old and very deep that had been sleeping under all that quiet, woke up. Sayre spread his wings. It was the first time he had ever spread them fully. They were small. They could not lift him yet, but he spread them anyway, and he stepped between Daniel and the assassin, and he snarled. A real snarl. A baby dragon snarl, half squeak and half thunder. A second later Ann appeared beside him, doing the same. 2 tiny dragons, wings out, teeth bared, standing in front of a human. The assassin froze. He had not expected this. He had been told the twins were broken, empty, slow. The hesitation was enough. A second shape exploded through the doorway, huge and silver and very fast. Krell. He had heard the noise. He had been on patrol 2 halls away. He hit the assassin with the full force of an armored body in motion, and the blade went flying, and the assassin went down, and it was over in less than 10 seconds. Krell pinned the traitor to the floor. He looked up. He saw the 2 trembling hatchlings still standing in front of Daniel with their tiny wings out. He saw Daniel reaching down, kneeling, gathering them into his arms. Sayre was crying, real dragon tears. They came down his face in small, bright drops like warm beads of light. Ann was crying too. They had defended someone. They had been brave. And now that the danger was past, the feeling of it was hitting them, and they were small again, and they pressed their wet faces into Daniel's chest and shook. "I'm here," Daniel whispered. He was crying too. "I'm here, you were so brave, so brave. I'm here, you're safe, you're safe." Krell stood up slowly. He looked down at the small, huddled shape of a human and 2 dragon princes clinging to him. "Human," he said. His voice was rough. "I was wrong about you. I have been wrong about you from the first day. I will spend the rest of my service correcting that wrong." Daniel could not speak. He just nodded against Sayre's small horned head. Outside, somewhere high above, the Empress was already moving. The whole spire was about to wake. By morning, an entire faction of the Empire would fall, and Lord Vaskar would learn what it meant to threaten a mother's children. But that came later. In this moment, in the small, warm room, there were only 3, a human and 2 baby dragons, holding on to each other in the dark. By dawn, the Empire was a different empire. The Empress had not slept. She had walked through the spire in full ceremonial armor, silver scales gleaming, and behind her had walked 20 of the oldest and most loyal warriors. Lord Vaskar was taken from his great house before the sun touched its high windows. His faction was pulled apart house by house, name by name. Some were sent to far cold worlds. Some were given a chance to swear new oaths and serve under new watch. 2 were executed for the attack on royal children. The empire watched and the empire understood. The empress was not playing a game. The empress had decided. She summoned the full imperial court on the 7th morning after the attack. Every great house was required to attend. The Hall of Pillars was filled from wall to wall with the largest dragons in the known galaxy. Gold light fell through high windows. The air smelled of stone and old fire. The empress stood at the top of the great stairs. Beside her, looking very small and very calm, stood Daniel Reyes, a human in the imperial court, standing beside the throne. It had never happened before. The empress spoke. She did not raise her voice. She did not need to. My children were silent, she said. For 10 months they did not smile. For 10 months no healer of ours could reach them. The fault was not theirs. The fault was ours. We taught them in the old way that to feel was to be weak. We taught them in the old way that to reach was to be punished. We were wrong. We were wrong from the day of the first hatching of the first dragon. The old way ends here, today, now. The warrior tutor tradition is dissolved. Royal younglings will be raised with affection, with play, with the right to cry and the right to be held. Every house will follow this. Every house will be watched. Any house that does not will answer to me. Silence. Then slowly the heads of the great houses bowed, one by one. Some bowed with relief, some with shame, some only because they had no other choice, but all of them bowed. The empress turned to Daniel. She lowered her great head until her eyes were level with his. You came to my home a stranger, she said softly. You taught my sons to smile. You stood between them and a blade with no weapon in your hands. You have given me back my children. I do not have words enough. I will spend my life trying to find them. Daniel could not answer. He bowed instead, the way a man bows to a mother. The hall did something it had never done before. It bowed back, not to the empress, to the human. Life on Vethara settled into something new. The twins grew. Dragons grow slowly compared to humans, but even so, by the end of the first year Ser and On were the size of small horses. They followed Daniel everywhere still. They had learned more words. They knew his name in 3 languages now. They argued with each other about which of them Daniel loved more. Daniel told them both every night that he loved them exactly the same and exactly completely. He stayed. His old colony station sent letters. They told him they understood. They told him to come visit when he could. He did once a year. He always came back to Vethara. The twins would not let him stay away long. Ser would write him a letter in his careful, clumsy claw and end everyone with, "Please come home soon, Daniel. We miss you. The spire is too quiet." Years passed. Daniel's hair turned gray at the edges first, then more. He grew a soft, round middle. He laughed often. He read every book he could find in the Imperial Library. He taught the twins about human history, human food, human songs. He learned dragon history, dragon food, dragon songs. He and Krell became friends slowly over many shared cups of strong dragon tea. He and Myra became closer friends, the kind who could sit in silence for an hour and not feel awkward. The Empress treated him as family. She called him brother of her heart in the old dragon tongue, which was a name no human had ever been given. The twins grew until they were larger than houses. Their wings stretched wider than the great hall. Their voices became deep. But when they came home, they still pressed their huge heads gently against Daniel's small, soft hands, exactly the way On had done on the 3rd night, all those years ago. Time moved on as time does. When the day came that Daniel was old, truly old, with a stiff back and slow hands and a mind still sharp as glass, the Empress had a balcony built for him at the top of the spire. It looked west over the high clouds into the long gold sunsets of Vethara. Daniel spent his evenings there. The twins came every night without fail. They were grown princes now, near to the age when they would one day rule. They had become wise. They had become kind. The Empire had begun to call them the gentle princes, and even the oldest dragons said it without mockery. On one such evening, the sun set the clouds on fire, and Daniel sat on his balcony with a warm cup in his hands. Sair lay on the stone to his left, head resting near Daniel's knee. An lay on the stone to his right in the same way. Two great dragons, big as ships, curled around one small old man. Daniel hummed an old human lullaby, the same one his mother had hummed to him, the same one he had hummed to the twins on his second day in the spire when they would not look at him. "Daniel," Sair said softly, "when we are emperor, may we still come to you for advice?" Daniel laughed. It was a small laugh now. "Of course you may," he said. "Whenever you want, you always could." "Even when you are very old?" An asked. There was something careful in the way he said it. Daniel reached out and rested a hand on each of their huge, warm brows. "Even then," he said, "even after, whatever I am, wherever I go, the love I have for you does not move. It stays. You carry it now. You will always carry it. Long after I am gone, you will look at each other and see it. Long after, when you teach your own children, they will feel it. That is how it works. That is how it has always worked." The twins did not answer for a long time. Then they smiled, both of them, the same smile, soft and slow and full of light, the same smile they had given him for the first time on the day of the feather and the cushions, a lifetime ago. The sun went down over Vithara. The clouds turned dark and quiet. Lady Myra would later write the final entry of her great archive, the one that would be taught to every dragon child for the next 1,000 years. She would write only one line at the end of it. When the empire could not heal its own children, it took a human to remind us that strength without tenderness is only fear wearing a crown. And in every nursery in the empire from that day forward, the children were held,